Results are starting to come in as polls have closed in most states in the Eastern and Central time zones. It's way too early to call the most contested races of the midterms, but recent weeks have seen Republicans close many gaps with Democrats when it comes to the Senate. Conservative commentator and founder of American Majority, Ned Ryun, is here to talk with me about how things are going so far tonight. Ned, do you think we're seeing the kind of red wave that Republicans expected?
It's still pretty early, but I'm seeing enough signs that I think it's definitely a red wave of sorts. You know, I'm sitting here in Virginia, and there's three key congressional House races, Virginia 2, Virginia 7, Virginia 10. I feel really good about Virginia 2 being a pickup for Republicans. And based off what I'm hearing from those that are on the ground involved with some of the campaigns in Virginia 10 and 7, they feel optimistic as well. If all three of those go Republican, look out for a pretty strong red wave tonight.
What do you think Republicans have done well in order to likely take the House and, as we've seen in polling, have a pretty good shot at the Senate?
I've been optimistic the whole year that Republicans were certainly taking back the House, and I was pretty bullish on their chances of taking back the Senate. I think the only real dynamic that's changed is polls have become more honest. In that people have left behind the registered voter polls, gone towards the likely voter polls. And that has shown what I thought was there all along, whether you were beginning of the year, summer, or into the fall, or into the weeks before the election, that there was going to be a Republican pickup of the House at a minimum. I think what Republicans have done well, they've stayed pretty focused on the issues that voters care about. I mean, voters have made it very clear in poll after poll after poll that they care about inflation, economy, rising gases, rising prices, rising crime. And Republicans have stayed true and focused on that message. And I think what Democrats have done in many ways, first of all, I think they've been lying to themselves in the polls and in belief polls that I did not believe reflected reality. But they were also trying to message to voters on topics that the voters simply didn't care about or certainly did not think were their top 5 issues. And so it really feels to me like Democrats were deeply detached, almost intentionally so, from what was important to voters in this midterm cycle. And it wasn't a mystery. I mean, voters were making it very clear what was important to them, and Democrats were convinced that they were going to make them feel that other issues were important to them, whether it was abortion, whether it was January 6th. And I think voters tonight are going to tell them, you wouldn't listen to us, and now you're going to have to listen to us because we're going to make it very clear at the polls how we feel about it all.
We've talked about a lot of the big races, probably in excess over the last few months leading up to this point. But what sort of surprises do you think we're going to see across the country tonight? Anything that stands out to you?
I think you're going to see some surprises in some statewides. I would not be surprised if Republicans maybe win a couple statewides up in Minnesota. I mean, I think you need to look at the attorney general's race. I think you need to look at the auditor race in Minnesota. I know for a while there, people did not think Michaels could win the gubernatorial in Wisconsin against Evers. I would not be surprised if Michaels pulls that out tonight, especially if Ron Johnson wins by at least 4 points. I feel like that's the measure. If Ron wins by 4 points, I think Michaels wins. Lombardo, to me, in Nevada was kind of a real surprise that he was running such a strong race. I think he's going to pick up that gubernatorial. I think the one that I'm fascinated by will be the Michigan gubernatorial. If Tudor Dixon, the Republican, pulls off that upset against Whitmer, and it truly would be one of the biggest upsets tonight, I think that would be a staggering rebuke for Democrats on a whole host of fronts. So Michigan, to me, if Tudor Dixon pulls that out, a pretty incredible win, and I think would really shock the political world.
We'll be watching it all, and I know that Ray Bogan's going to be tracking all those races for us. I know that you are a supporter of former President Trump. Now, GOP mega donor Ken Griffin just said this week that it is time for the Republican Party to move on from Trump. What races are you looking at that would reject that thinking, that would tell Republicans that is not the direction?
Well, for case in point, I'd look at Arizona. You've got Kerry Lake, you've got Blake Masters, you've got Mark Fincham, the attorney general candidate. All of those were endorsed by Trump. I think all of them stand a very legitimate chance of winning tonight. And I've made this point in other places. In Arizona, I'm not looking at a red wave. I'm looking at America First wave. And if all of those candidates, statewide candidates that Trump endorsed and made very clear early on that he was backing him, if all of them win, I think that's going to be really hard for people like Ken and others to say, well, it's time to move on from Trump. You know, I've made this point to Trump himself. You had a great win record in the primary, and now to seal the deal, your candidates have to win the generals. And he's been out there a lot more than people thought he would be in the general elections and working on their behalf, doing rallies, even doing, I think, 14, 15, $16 million of spending. He's really invested into this general election. So I think after tonight, if a lot of his candidates, where he's put some real endorsement weight, money weight, a lot of his political cachet behind, if they win tonight, I think it's very hard for people to make an argument that the party should move on from Trump. And I think regardless of what they think anyway, I think on November 15th, he's going to announce that he's running for election in 2024.
Yeah, that's widely suspected that that is going to be his big announcement in a week, and quite the timing, a week after midterms. I was wondering if you think that any of the results tonight will inform that decision, or do you think his mind's pretty made up at this point?
Oh, I think it's made up. I've been having conversations with him throughout the year. I wanted him to announce earlier. And then I really got the feeling a few months ago that it was probably going to be sometime between the midterms and Thanksgiving that he was going to announce that he was running in 2024. So this isn't a surprise to me. I think he feels really good about where all the political climate is, where he stands with the base, his win record in the primary. I think he's going to have a great win record in the general. And I think all of those things added together, he's running. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that there's 99.999% chance that November 15th he's going to announce I'm running in 2024.
Conservative commentator and founder of American Majority, Ned Ryun, thank you so much for being with me tonight.